Hey, welcome to FreightWaves NOW Manic Monday edition style. That's right, it's just another Manic Monday here at the crazy FreightWaves offices. Things are happening all over the place, and we have got three, not one, not two, but three market experts to bring you an overview of the developing situation we have with tornadoes in the middle of the nation. What could be happening there? What's the headhaul index tell us? And other things about volumes and rates as we look macrocosmically at the overview of our freight economy, hitting you here at 4 o'clock Eastern Time on FreightWaves Now. And thanks for tuning in. And also Donnie Gilbert bringing us the broker's angle. So let's begin. How you doing, Nick Austin? Welcome.
Hey, Chad. Good day.
Are you feeling refreshed?
Feeling rejuvenated, recharged for the week, absolutely. I hope everyone out there had a great weekend as well.
I know it's hot and dry here in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
It is, and it's going to be getting even hotter across the southeast later this week.
You know what? I can't complain about that. But where do we have these developing situations?
Out in the Plain States, and I tell you, the last 3 or 4 weeks off and on, the Great Plains, especially parts of Texas, but other areas of the Great Plains have been getting slammed by severe storms and tornadoes. They just can't catch a break.
They really can't.
And it's already happened earlier today. There have already been severe storms across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, other parts of the Great Plains. And that threat is going to continue all the way through the rest of today and through tonight. And those are sometimes the most dangerous severe storms when they happen at night, because they can really catch people off guard if they don't know ahead of time about the threat. So we're talking about Texas Panhandle, up to Oklahoma City, even as far east as maybe parts of Missouri and all the way up into Kansas. So it's over a pretty large area.
I have a question.
Yes.
That brings up, do tornadoes happen just as often at night as they do during the day?
I don't think on average they happen as often at night, but they do take place at night.
Okay.
They absolutely do. And sometimes they can, even if whether it's during the day or at night, sometimes the reason why they're hard to see is because they're wrapped in rain. And so even during the day, they could be hard to detect. But yes, they do happen at night. Now, probably the area that's most at risk, the high risk for severe storms and tornadoes today, and the Storm Prediction Center, which is in Norman, Oklahoma, that's a great group of people. It's part of the National Weather Service.
Yes.
And they issue these, for these large regions where the severe storm threats are on a daily basis. They rarely issue a high risk for severe storms. That's the worst category that they could issue. It's the highest category.
DEFCON 5.
DEFCON 5, and they hardly ever do that. So when you see a high risk for severe storms, even if it's just over a small area, you know it's a potentially serious situation. So the areas that are at that high risk are mostly from around parts of northern Texas. We're going to look at that on the critical events map here in a second. And up into Oklahoma City, close to Tulsa.
Oh,
so
wow, yeah, look at that.
Where you see this area right here, this area that's kind of in that pink shading, that's where you have that highest risk, that high risk, the DEFCON 5, as you say, for severe thunderstorms,
yes,
producing very large hail and destructive winds, as well as that's the highest risk for the tornadoes. And there's something else about this, Chad. It's not just that there's a high risk for tornadoes, but any tornadoes that develop in this region, especially where you see the pink shaded region here,
okay,
they could end up being very strong tornadoes today, possibly EF3, EF4, like really strong tornadoes. And they could stay on the ground for a long time, what we call long track tornadoes,
yes,
which are also very dangerous. So this is potentially going to be a really, really just severe weather outbreak across this part of the country. Again, it'll be several rounds of severe storms today and possibly through tonight.
okay.
So Interstate 40, 44, Interstate 35 heading from Texas up in Oklahoma, those are some of the areas that are really in that worst target zone. So the message for drivers is they need to pay attention to just rapidly changing weather conditions as they're driving and hauling through those regions. And just kind of know what those signs are that there might be a tornado nearby, and just pay close attention.
If you're a driver and you notice these developing situations, is there a standard operating procedure, a protocol? What do you do?
Well, I mean, most drivers have cell phones, so you can get severe weather warnings when the National Weather Service issues them. So if a tornado warning does pop up, they're driving through that area, just get to shelter as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Pull off the nearest exit and just get indoors in a sturdy structure somewhere, in a sturdy building. That's really the best advice I can give you, is to get to a shelter as soon as you can once you hear that warning come out. And you know, mobile devices nowadays, it's so easy to get those warnings, and you can have your devices set up to where the GPS on the phone just follows you wherever you go. So no matter where you are,
Sure.
you should be able to get severe storm and tornado warnings from the Weather Service.
And if they're tuning into FreightWaves Now.
Absolutely.
Right? And
Yep.
as always, what should they do?
Be careful out there.
Be careful, a
Yeah.
variation on your theme. Okay, thank you, Nick Austin. We
You
will be
bet.
careful, it's not all everywhere, but also especially, of course, in Texas and Oklahoma. Now turning to Kyle Cunningham, ladies and gentlemen. He made his inaugural debut on Friday, and the fans can't get enough. We are here again. You're going to give us an overview of freight conditions. What's happening, man?
Let's talk about what's going to happen in the coming week. Let's talk about what's happening today. But first, let's talk about what's happening on the big picture over the last year. Now, what we're looking at is the blue mountain in the background, outbound tender ejections for the United States of America coming in today at 4.3. That's telling you that we've got about 95% of all that available freight out there being accepted readily. And then we're going to look at the outbound volumes, 94.27, down from that 10,000 base point. And then we're looking at the tender lead time at a 2.6 on the day. So what we're looking at down here, guys, you can see that in terms of tender lead time from this time last year, it is a 0% change.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that crazy?
I think that is unusual because this time last year we were looking at the capacity crunch, a whole lot of things we would be, and like we're wondering, well, this year is quite different. Well,
Totally different. Let's look at what was going on in terms of rejections this time last year.
Yeah.
They were basically tracking near equal. You have your seasonality, your holiday periods. This orange line here, the outbound volume, is when you're going to see those dips and guys going home or just shutting down for those holiday periods.
Yeah.
And we can see right here, there's Thanksgiving, there's Christmas. Here's a little bit of Easter right here. And what we're seeing actually is a divergence between the tender lead time actually up a little bit, reaching that 0% point, but the volume from this time last year is down 8%. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Down 80% on the rejections from this time last year. I mean, it's basically just a fall off all the way down. And so what's this telling me? This is a big alligator mouth right here, right? All of this right here, this big, huge black hole is a big alligator chomping up freight.
the alligator eats the bigger number.
There's a ton of guys out there driving. And I mean, it's pretty much understandable to see when things get good, people say, let me get in a truck, let me get out there, let me get a piece of that. Well, what happens is when all those people come out there, simple supply and demand. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and take a look at the head haul map for the nation and see what's going on in the USA. Now, we've got some really awesome stuff happening in terms of outbound volume on that I-75 corridor, little bit of 95 here. So if you love running I-75, just doing these right here, keep that lane rolling.
Lots of opportunity through there.
Lots of opportunity. The only times you're ever going to find a little bit of struggle is maybe having to do a little bit of deadhead back out of that Fort Wayne down to Indianapolis. But everything right here from Chattanooga east, even up here in the Northeast. Right now, if you're up in the Northeast,
Harrisburg.
don't worry, don't waste your time trying to find something in New York City. Go ahead, run down to that Elizabeth, that Harrisburg, and keep yourself rolling. In terms of the
You want to remind
heartland,
everybody that about the blue and the red? And
yeah,
the, and
so
the white?
if you're a carrier, you want to stay in the blue. That's going to give you the best optionality in terms of a good paying load out of there. And even if it's not paying that well, it's going to keep the wheels rolling. In terms of the red zones, on the brokerage side, that's where you want to hit it hard and make sure you know that you're going to have a lot of capacity in those regions because there's a lack of outbound freight. And speaking of a lack of outbound freight, right now, Texas, it's hot, it's lonely, and you really
And
want to
there's
make
tornadoes.
and there's tornadoes.
So
It's
what
just,
could go wrong?
well, what could go
Houston's
right?
kind of remained balanced. I thought that maybe that would have been heating up a little bit.
Well, and we spoke about Houston on Friday, and actually I had some time to think about it. And what I realized is that the reason the volume in Houston started spiking was because it dried up. All of those floods had basically shut down the outbound volume.
Oh.
And as the flood waters recede and go back into the Gulf, Now the volume is going to be rolling out. So in terms of that great Texas region right now, watch Houston, watch Dallas. If you're in Fort Worth, take that 35 across, check out what's in Dallas. In terms of your western regions, Salt Lake City on the blue and Los Angeles and Ontario, as always, they're the favorites.
Usual.
And hey, if you can find yourself heading into Stockton on the carrier side, price yourself in. Make sure you're getting what you deserve to go into that area.
Good advice. Yeah, all the action's out east, really.
That's where it's looking. Take a look at
right.
Memphis.
Thanks for that overview, Kyle. I appreciate that, bringing it to us. He also, by the way, was an over-the-road driver for a couple of years. He can tell us more about that on another edition, but he knows what he is talking about. Now, going to Donnie Gilbert. He, too, knows what he is talking about, especially giving us a broker's market playbook. Good afternoon, Donnie.
Good afternoon, Chad.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, sir.
Great.
So yesterday I was sitting down, I was looking at our most volatile markets chart, and it popped out, and I looked up and I saw Omaha, Nebraska. It had a couple of increases that kind of brought to my attention. So what I've brought up today is I've brought up Omaha, Nebraska, and what we have here is we have our inbound tender volumes and our outbound tender volumes. Our outbound tender volumes are at around 61 points, while our inbound is in the purple. It's actually at 51 points. So what this kind of shows is this is what derives our head haul market. So we see with the outbound being 61 and the inbound being 51, it gives us a head haul score of about 10. But what really kind of set the charts off was we see a large increase in volumes here over the weekend, and we saw a slight dip in the inbound, which that can get kind of concerning and something that you really want to watch, because if you constrict the inbound trucks, that can really tighten the market up on capacity.
Does 10 make it a white head haul index still, or does that start to trend it blue?
It's still going to keep it white, but what brought my attention was this inbound coming down, because that can get, you have to have trucks to move freight. And when the trucks are being reduced coming inbound, that can really cause the market to tighten up really quick, and that can kick off your tender rejections jumping up, and that's going to, in a sense, push your freight rates up. So let's go and kind of look at my next map here. I'm going to bring up what actually happens with the tender rejection volumes.
Okay.
So we're going to push it out here to a month, and right here in these last few days, we see.
Let's see. Give us an overview of what we're looking at. So we're still
We're still comparing it to the volumes in the blue.
Okay.
And then in the pink we have the reefer tender rejections, and in the green we have the van tender rejections.
All of Omaha.
So we're bringing it down here, and in these last few days you can see as volumes increased, the reefer jumped up to around, I believe, the 34% mark, and the van jumped up to 16% already. And so this is when our volumes increased and the inbound decreased, we saw that these were picking up. And at a reefer rejection of 33.96%.
Which has been trending down over the last few months, but suddenly went back up.
Well, right back here in March, this is where Omaha flooded. And so we had the big flood hit. You had the peak of volumes before the flood hit, and then the volumes dropping down because of the flood. We had our rejection rates jump up, and then we've kind of had it trend down. So here in the last few days is kind of what it kind of picked back up, which kind of brought it back to our attention, and it brought up our reefer tender rejections of almost 34%, which then is going to push up tender rejections for reefers. And 34% is a very high rejection rate. So if you're interested in a market, this is a market where the rates are very elevated. Now the dry van have picked up to 16%. I say that it's getting fairly good when you get between 8 and 10%.
Okay.
Now we're up to 16%. So this is another market where the rates are being pushed up by the dry van. So everything's
Omaha. Somewhere in Middle America.
Well, when you look at all this, and this is very good information, we also at every time we need to look at the surrounding markets. So I'm going to bring up your reefer tender rejection map, and let's look at all the markets around them, because when you get this information, there could be capacity coming in for other markets. You could have a market above, north, south, east, or west that has a lot of extra capacity, and they'll deadhead in that market, and that can actually kill the rising tender rejections. So here I've brought up the reefer tender rejection map, and right here is Omaha. So when you look up and you look at the surrounding markets, all these markets are in blue.
So unlike the map that Kyle was showing us, which was a head haul map as well, but just for the whole country, for all freight, this is specified to reefer right now.
This is strictly reefer, and it's the reefer tender rejection index.
One thing that is striking me here is there's no red, right? It's all pretty balanced or hot.
Yes,
Nice.
we got a lot of a lot of poultry picking up through here, and this is going to keep a lot of capacity tied up for reefers right through here. So when you look at the Omaha and you look around it, this is 34% reefer tender rejection, and around it is also very high as well.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be moving into the Omaha market because they don't need to. They have freight all around it.
Yes.
So Omaha's on its own when it comes to reefers. So that tender rejection rate's going to stay fairly high for, could be a few weeks at least, or even longer, depending on how long this keeps in effect. Now, looking at dry vans, I'm going to bring up your outbound tender rejection.
A fourth look at sonar.
And when we look at this one as well, right here's Omaha, we look at the surrounding markets, they're all also in blue as well. So there is no relief for Omaha for dry vans or reefer. All the markets around it have plenty of freight, and they're also in the blue. So nobody's going to be moving their trucks and deadheading into Omaha.
Yeah.
So this is going to keep our tender rejections elevated until there's more inbound capacity.
Whoa.
Or the outbound volumes start to drop.
I think that is some super helpful insight for a carrier's, for a broker's playbook.
Yeah, so when we look at a market, dive into it, look at what's coming in, look at what's going out, and also check the surrounding markets to make sure there's not one that could be in red that has a lot of capacity. They'll move their trucks over, and that can really hurt that market. So this is a good example of a market that they're on their own. They have no help.
On their own for having high rates.
Yes.
Right?
So,
all right. Thank you. Fantastic stuff.
Have a good week.
Way to start us off hot here on Manic Monday at FreightWaves Now. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're coming live to you each and every business day at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. And of course, share the love. We're on social media. We'd love for you to help us spread the message about what our market experts are bringing to us each and every day. And with these insights, looking at macro, looking at micro markets, looking at how you can arrange your daily playbook as well as your weekly playbook. So we will see you tomorrow. Looking forward to it. If you ever want a demo on sonar, you just go to freightwaves.com/sonar. And if you want to subscribe to our channel, well, if you're on YouTube right now, just press that button right below and check us out and be a part and get a little bit of this data each and every day and interpretation of the data. That's how it's actionable. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. And in the meantime, don't worry. Be happy.